The RcBazaar Skysurfer V4 comes in totally 3 variants. One is a kit only. Kit only means there's no electronics or anything included in the model. This is basically for people who wants to use their own motor if they have, or they want to use an upgraded motor, or if they already have servos, they want to include their servos and use their own speed controllers. For them, the kit version is the most suitable one. The next version is the PNP version. That means the servos are installed, motor is installed, speed controller is installed, and basically all electronics are installed. All the canopy latches are already glued, so it's more like an ARF. And the third version is the PNP, same thing, with the charger and the battery. What I have here now is the kit version of the RcBazaar Skysurfer V4. Now as you see, the kit version comes in, the fuselage comes in 2 halves. And there's no servo, or there's no servo plate or anything installed in this, neither the motor mount or the motor. What comes with it is 2 halves of the fuselage, the push rod for the rudder, and the Teflon tube on top. There's a carbon fiber tube which will act as a spar to the fuselage, as well as the push rod goes into the tube for the elevator. And also you have the canopy, you have the ply plate which goes into the front of the fuselage, which will give you additional support, as well as these two. There's a groove for you to install the elevator and the rudder servos in this, and there are landing gear locks, and there's motor mounts. Yeah, so these are all the parts which come with the kit. Now let's keep this aside and let's go how to start working on the kit. Now if you see, you have the rudder push rod. Now guys, what I want you to do is, this is a Teflon tube. Okay, this is the guide for the push rod. The push rod goes into the Teflon tube. Okay, this will make it smoother and also make sure that the push rod will not bind or bend during operation. Okay. Now guys, what I have also done is, I have the total length of the Teflon tube comes, some of the models comes with a 28 inches length. You don't need 28 inches. Okay. So basically what I want you to do is, take this Teflon tube, this is how it will be. I need you to mark 3 inches and cut off the Teflon tube only. Guys, make sure that you cut only the Teflon tube, not the metal wire. Okay, so measure 3 inches of Teflon tube and cut it off. Now coming back to the carbon fiber tube for the fuselage, which will also act as a stiffener for the fuselage so it doesn't flex. Also the same tube acts as a elevator push rod guide. So what you have to do is, there is one more item which goes in between the carbon fiber tube. This is for your tail gear assembly. Now that particular plastic part is in the fuselage parts with the wooden ply plate. So I'm just going to open this, and if you see, there is a T-type plastic piece will sit here. Sorry, this is where your elevator and rudder sits, the elevator and the rudder, and this comes to the bottom. This is how it sits. The whole fuselage, this is the front of the fuselage as you see, and I'm using the left side of the fuselage. This is the front, and you see the groove here, this, and there is also a round spot. This is where this plastic part sits. Now what you need to do is first guide the plastic part into the carbon fiber tube. Okay, and this is where it needs to sit here. And after that, what you can do is the carbon fiber tube, if you see, there's a groove all the way here. Here, 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 here. Now the carbon fiber tube goes in all the way like this. As I said, the plastic piece is here, 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 and this goes inside this, and it stops here. If you see, it just comes out of the plastic piece and stops, right? So at this junction, what guys I want you to do is, I want you to take cyano or epoxy, whatever you're comfortable with. Stick this plastic piece to the foam, and also stick some amount of glue into the plastic piece and the carbon fiber tube here at this junction, and put some cyano or glue, whatever you have, all the way here, 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 and here. So basically you have made this not movable, not anymore. Okay, the carbon fiber tube should just come out short of the plastic piece by like 1.5 2 mm, not more than that. So if you see, the carbon fibers just come out a little and just here. Okay, that's how it should be. Once the carbon fiber tube is secure with the plastic piece for the tail wheel assembly, then what I want you to take is, you have already cut off the 3 inches Teflon tube, which was too lengthy, right? So I want you to take the scale and mark 3.5 inch from the Z bend side. As I had mentioned, all the Z bends are already made from the factory. I want to take a scale and measure 3.5 inch from the starting of the Teflon tube towards the Z bend. So measure 3.5 inch. 1, 2, 3, 3.5. So here is where I'm just marking. Sorry guys, I don't have a permanent marker handy, so I'm using a dot pen. So it is, I hope you can see this, but you get the idea. So basically I have marked 3.5 inch from the Z bend side. Okay, now why should I mark this 3.5 inch? Now you see this groove here at the fuselage. Now this groove is where the Teflon tube exits out. This is for the rudder servo. Okay, this 3.5 inch should come exactly here. This is where the exit. That means the Teflon tube should be out of the fuselage by 3.5 inch only. It can't be more or it can't be too less. Between 3 and 3.5 inch is perfect, but not more or less. So you can place it here with the, okay, let me show it. Let me put this also here. This is how your carbon fiber tube is installed here. We have marked the 3.5 inch. I want the 3.5 inch coming just out of the fuselage here at this junction. Okay, and the carbon fiber tube should be going alongside the Teflon tube should be going alongside the carbon fiber tube. So again, by holding this, I want you to put a few drops of cyano here, here, and here, and here, and here. So basically what we have done is, we have done the push rod for the rudder and the carbon fiber tube, which acts as a guide for the elevator push rod, is also installed. Of course, you need to glue it, as I said. After you have installed the carbon fiber tube and the push rod for the rudder, which exits here, and you have already glued it in place, now what you need is the ply plate, which acts as the servo mount and your battery mount, as well as also it gives you stiffness to the front of the fuselage. So I'm just going to open this and a few more plastic pieces, which I'll come to this later. Now guys, you see the RcBazaar branding is on one side and the other side is plain. So basically the RcBazaar branding should come towards the top. Now this is the top of the model. So basically your ply should be installed like this. Okay, either ways, here or there, to either sides, this is how it has to be installed. There's a nice slot, if you see here, there's a nice slot which the wood formers go in, and all you have to do is use epoxy or cyano and stick this permanently. Just make sure that it doesn't shake. You have aligned it properly, and the RcBazaar branding is towards the top, and you have stuck it. And add whatever the glue what you like, maybe epoxy or maybe cyano. But after you do this, what I would recommend you to do is take epoxy, not cyano, and not 5 minutes epoxy. Use 30 minutes epoxy, at least for this particular job. So take a 30 minutes epoxy, mix it well, and start applying all the way here to all the sides. Of course, this is already stuck here like this. So here, 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 and also take some glue and put inside these grooves, like how you installed this side. Here you put glue and you stuck this wood. Now this part will go inside here. So I want you to get this part ready, that by putting epoxy or glue here, here, and here in all the grooves. So once you're done with it, then all you have to do is just make sure that it goes in. That's it. Now this is how your finished fuselage will look like after you have glued it. And after you have put epoxy, I would recommend you to take rubber band and put rubber bands over as many places as you want, so it doesn't deform. And also, before you stick, just make sure that these are level. It is not, one is not longer than the other. You check in the front as well as the back. This is the rear, so check it should be like this. And same thing with near the motor mount, it should be, both the halves should be same level. It shouldn't be this way or this way. Okay, same thing in the nose, it shouldn't be unequal, it should be equal with this. Okay, and after you have stuck it, maybe 30 minutes or a overnight drying epoxy, I would recommend you to put a rubber band all the places and leave it for the glue to cure. Now after that, start with the motor mount. Now this is your motor mount. I'm just going to open it. Oops, never mind. So here we have, I've removed the parts what is included in the motor mount. There are lots of screws, there's a motor mount, there's a spinner, and there's a faceplate for the motor. Now what are these screws for? These two small screws are for your spinner. There are 4 screws of equal length. This is for your faceplate of the motor, and there are 2 long screws. This is for your motor mount. Now let's start with the motor mount. It's very simple. If you see, take 2 halves, this is how it goes in, and you can't go wrong with this. Now you see, this is the motor mount. Now you can use these two screws and tighten this. So basically what happens is two halves of the motor mount goes inside the fuse, inside this foam, and holds it like this. So the screws in goes in here and it holds this piece. So which is likely more than enough, but I like to do it a permanent way. So what I do basically is I'd like to, because this is not removable, I don't need this to be removable. So I put some dab of epoxy over here and I put the motor mount. It is difficult to use cyano at this place, so I would recommend a 30 minutes epoxy. After I stuck it with epoxy, then you can go ahead and you can screw it in. The epoxy will primarily hold the motor mount. Also the screws what you're tightening will also be as a backup. Now I have not tightened this fully. Guys, also what I want to do is, if you are finding any gap here, I mean, it's not going to cause any harm, but I wouldn't like a gap. So what I did was I took a rubber band and I taped it like this and here. So there's not much gap. Okay. Or just hold it until the glue dries if you're using a 5 minutes or a 30 minutes epoxy. After you finish this is where your motor is going to be mounted. Depending on what motor you're going to use, this is the base plate. Either you can have an outrunner motor which jets outside, or if you want a motor which is in runner and here, and the whole motor can go in here. And if you see, this is how it sits in, and there are 4 screws as I showed you here. These 4 screws will screw in here, 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 and here. So here now is the time where you have to decide whether you want to use a motor which is inside or you want to use outrunner motor which is outside. So this is how, and after a little later I will show how you install the propeller and the spinner for these. So this completes the installation of the motor mount. Now next, after you have mounted the motor, if you see there's a groove, right? There's a groove inside. Now that groove is for your motor wires to go all the way here, and it comes out of here. And after it exits out of here, it goes inside the fuselage and comes out of here. Just to give you an insight, I shall show you this. This is how the finished model is. This is how the motor is already installed here, if you see, right? And the motor wires are coming all the way from here. It's exiting here and it is going inside the fuselage from the underneath, from this part. Okay, so similarly you have to just route your wires there. Next we go with the balance, whatever is available, the fuselage parts. I see some few plastic parts. Now these plastic parts, what you see here is canopy locks. This is the canopy. Now this piece goes to the fuselage side and this piece goes to the canopy side. Now take this, it's already glued, and there's already, if you see, there is a slot in the canopy. So this part goes into the slot which is already done here. Now guys, make sure, if you see, there's a protrusion one side and there is protrusion is not there, that's this side. So basically a protrusion side should be towards the canopy, not outer side, towards inside. Okay, so you see this protrusion, I want you to put the protrusion inside, inner side of the canopy, and push it in. Now make sure that the last groove, what you see so many grooves here, you see, I want you to push the plastic part all the way in so that you don't see any plastic grooves. Okay, and here you can add cyano, or I prefer epoxy, but it's up to you. You can mix in epoxy, put some epoxy in and just let it dry. Maybe even 5 minutes epoxy also will do here. Now this is the fuselage side. Now take this piece, and there's already groove made here already for you. So this is the way you install it, and put some cyano here, or I would use epoxy. And guys, make sure that there should be a gap. See the correct orientation. It should not be mounted this way. If you mount it this way, then the plastic piece goes very close to the foam and your canopy will never lock. So just make sure that the piece goes in the correct orientation like this. Okay, and push it all the way in and put some cyano or put some epoxy. Now all you have to do is take the canopy, lock it in the front, and all you have to do is just click and it gets locked. This is how the canopy, and to remove it, it comes out. Of course, because this came out because it was not stuck, but once if it's stuck, you don't have to worry. It's going to be like, I'll just show you the here lock, positive lock. The canopy will not come just like that with wind pressure, but with little bit of lift up, it'll come. If you think the canopy lock is not secure and you're not confident about it, all you have to do is take a small piece of cellophane tape, paste it maybe 1 inch to the canopy side, and draw it all the way for another 2 inch towards the foam side and just stick it. So all you have to do is to remove the canopy, just remove the cellophane tape and the canopy will come out. This is just as a additional measure for safety, so you don't lose the canopy. Now let's talk about the landing gear installation. You have a separate packet for landing gear. You see there's a couple of plastic pieces. This is for the main gear assembly. This is for your tail wheel assembly, and these are the locks for the main gears. So I'm going to talk about the tail wheel assembly a little later. So for now, let's work on the main gear assembly. So main gear assembly is very simple. If you see, there are two sizes. One is slightly larger, if you see, and one is slightly smaller, right? The larger one goes in the front and the smaller one goes at the back. Here also, if you see, there's an orientation. This is the correct way how it should go in. If you see the cutout in the slot made for in the foam for the landing gear plastic piece to go and glue in there, there is more length here and there's a little lesser length here. Similarly, even in the plastic piece, there's a lesser length here and there's more length here. So in the same orientation, what I recommend you to do is mix a little bit of Oraldate, that is epoxy, 5 minutes epoxy or cyano. So put some cyano or epoxy here and some amount of here, and all you have to do is just push it in and just wait for the epoxy to dry. Similarly, the rear end, if you see, there's a more length here and a shorter length here. Same thing with the plastic piece here, more length here and a shorter length here. So all you have to do is just same way with epoxy, put here and inside, and on this all you have to do is just put it in, and this will complete your landing gear assembly. Of course, the locks, then the landing gear comes a little later. I'll speak about that, how to install that a little later.